good morning, and thanks for joining us today. This is Dot Frank with the Bismarck Mandan Home Builders Association on another Free for All Friday, and I am so excited to be in the studio today for a couple reasons. First, we've got some outstanding guests that will come on air with us today. Second, it is going to be an unbelievable weekend, and any opportunity you can get to hop outside and experience what's coming over the course of the next few days is a good thing. So welcome. Thanks for tuning in. This is the Home Builders Association. We've got a lot on our plate today, and we're going to start out by feeding you full of facts when it comes to affordability and housing. We were fortunate to participate in last week's Affordable Housing Association's statewide housing conference from the Housing Finance Agency. And so we've got two guests on air with us this morning representing the NDHFA, and that's Jennifer Henderson and Max Wetz. Welcome.
Good morning, Doc.
So you guys had a crazy week a couple weeks ago. We had a crazy week, which we'll also talk about on this program when it comes to our home show. But I'd like to have you introduce yourselves to our listeners this morning. Perhaps tell them, who you are. We've got Max and Jennifer, and what you do with the Housing Finance Agency.
Sure. Well, I'll start. My name is Jennifer Henderson, and I'm the director of the Planning and Housing Development Division within North Dakota Housing. And so what our division does is we foster the development of affordable housing throughout the state with financing resources and provide technical assistance to communities as well to assess their housing needs.
Well, Dot, it's great to be with you again. I'm the Director of Public Affairs for North Dakota Housing Finance Agency, and our agency really is focused, as Jennifer said, on housing all of the people in North Dakota. And we do that through a variety of different ways with the affordable rental housing that Jennifer helps develop through our First Home and our North Dakota Roots programs, our home ownership programs, which really are kind of the flagship of the agency, and then through our property management. We help provide the affordable low-income housing that's located all across North Dakota.
Excellent. Well, so you celebrated your 25th statewide housing conference, and that was held on February 16th and 17th right here in Bismarck at the Ramkota. How did that go? And 25 years under your belts, if you could spend a little bit of time talking about how things have changed, especially with your tenure in the agency and the course of 25 years of housing conferences. Same topics, different topics? What's the urgency, and how is that changing?
Well, the housing conference always is a great opportunity to get together with the other housing industry folks in North Dakota. We always spend a lot of time celebrating our accomplishments, talking about new ideas, talking about challenges, looking at opportunities. And so it really is a good opportunity just to get together and with the other houser people in North Dakota. It's quite an accomplishment to have 25 years of housing conference, and it has been we've been building the housing conference over the years. We had about 360 participants in the housing conference this year, which is amazing compared to where we started when it was just a smaller gathering of housing people. And so we're looking forward to 25 more years of great housing conferences.
And we had, as an association, the opportunity to participate in quite a few of the different sessions that you hosted. And they always are a great group of individuals that get together and share resources and ideas and insights into housing. But before we go into some of the sessions that you hosted this year at the housing conference, I'd like to talk about the accomplishments. You had referenced that, Max. You celebrate not only the accomplishments of your agency, but the accomplishments of others and how they contribute to housing. And you do that through a lunch event where you recognize champions of affordable housing. And I'm happy to say in the Bismarck-Mandan area, it seems year after year, we always have a few of them that are from this area that are recipients of this award. Can you talk a little bit about why you recognize those champions of affordable housing and what that means to help, I guess, foster some real support for affordability in North Dakota?
Well, as an agency, as a state agency, we're limited in what we can do. And so we really rely on the collaboration and the partnership with others, the home builders, with realtors, with lenders, with our development partners. And so we want to make sure that we're paying tribute and that we're recognizing those contributions that those partners make to the success, because we can't, while we like to celebrate our accomplishments as an agency, we can't do it alone, and we definitely need those partners. We have a number of different champion awards that we give out during the housing conference for our real estate partners, for our lenders, for developers, and for just leadership, for those people who really have gone above and beyond to move affordable housing forward in North Dakota. This year, we awarded our Housing Leadership Award to Terry Hansen, who is the Executive Director of the Grand Forks Housing Authority, and he's really been involved in housing statewide. He's been involved with the Association of Housing Authorities, and they've been a really great partner in developing the policies and developing the programs that we rely on in North Dakota.
So as the Home Builders Association, we represent a variety of industries and aspects that tie into housing. And they also coincide with some of the categories for the awards that you acknowledge. So for instance, financial institutions are recognized, real estate agents, property management companies, and housing production companies. If we've got members that are within those different areas of recognition, what do they need to do in order to get considered for these awards? I mean, how does that process take place? Are there nominations, applications?
It is a nomination process, and we always are looking for new nominees. We want to make sure that we're recognizing those people who are having a big impact in our community and in our state. And so the information is out on our website. We usually take those nominations beginning in the late fall, early winter, and we use that information. We have a committee that reviews those applications, and we like to award those. For our lenders and our real estate partners, that's really based on their production. Those agents and those lenders who are out in the community making those first-time home buyer loans that are so valuable for our agency.
Excellent. So always an opportunity to get engaged, get involved, and get recognized, which is wonderful for not only the recipients, but for the agency and the promotion of your products and services. Now, I want to, turn away from those that you recognize, and let's recognize yourselves when it comes to the agency. I'd like to talk about some of the accomplishments, and perhaps before we go on break, if Jennifer, you want to talk about maybe a couple highlights to whet their appetite so they hang on during commercial break.
Well, thank you, Dot. Yes, North Dakota Housing has worked really hard in the last year to support affordable housing. And so we have several programs under our home ownership and our Planning and Housing Development Division that have fostered growth throughout North Dakota this year.
Excellent. We'll talk about how that growth has been accomplished and what they anticipate in the years ahead. Stay tuned. You're listening to Super Talk 1270's Free for All Friday.
Right now, 37.
Super Talk 1270, home of the Bismarck Bobcats and high school sports. Listen online or anywhere on the Radio Pup app. Super Talk 1270.
Welcome back. Thanks for sticking with us over break or tuning in just now. This is Dot Frank with the Bismarck Mandan Home Builders Association on a Free for All Friday. Again, excited to be here with some repeat guests. We love having them with us. With the North Dakota Housing Finance Agency, we have Jennifer Henderson and Max Wetz. We just got done talking about the Housing Conference, 25 years under your belt, a very successful program that brings people with an interest in housing from across the state to assemble, share ideas, get re-energized, to go back out and tackle the issues surrounding affordability in our state. We talked about the accomplishments of others that you recognize at this annual event during the luncheon, but now I'd like to focus on some of the accomplishments that your agency has achieved over the past year. And so I found out on your website that you published this really great sheet of accomplishments, and I'd like to just run through it, Jennifer, and if you could provide some insight on exactly what you do and the impact that it has on our state and more importantly, the citizens within our state. So I noticed this statistic. In 2015, it says the Housing Finance Agency financed more than $179.8 million in mortgages for over 1,100 households. It's huge. How is this happening?
Well, thank you. We couldn't have done that without our participating lenders. They're really important to our business. And how it works is buyers can go into community lender that's one of our participating lenders and request our programs. And our programs are really designed to help low to moderate incomes households achieve homeownership. And we can also provide down payment and closing cost assistance for those folks that are qualified to help them get into homes. And so this year, we did have a very high year in homeownership loans, and it's wonderful. And I think part of the reason for that is there's been a little bit of increase in supply in homes that are available for those low to moderate income households. And not only that, we updated our Roots program to allow North Dakota and non-North Dakota households, non-first-time home buyers, to qualify for our program. So that really helped with an uptick in our programs.
In talking about the down payment and closing cost assistance, that really is one of the biggest values that we bring to the table for our borrowers. That's a huge issue, especially for first-time home buyers and for lower income, for seniors, for the single parents, for the veterans and disabled households. They really need that cash up front to be able to get into that home. And so that's something that our agency, it's kind of unique to our agency. There aren't a lot of other options for that down payment and closing cost assistance. And in fact, in 2015, about 71% of the loans that we made utilized that down payment and closing cost.
Well, and you think about that and you look at the statistics that come out on a fairly regular basis about how Americans are or aren't saving. And you can see why that would be so critical in order to get them into some housing. You know, I think about when we just started out, young, fresh out of college. I wasn't saving my money. I was spending it when I was in college on books and on food and tuition and whatnot. So it's hard to have that nest egg to begin with to plunk down on some housing. And even if it's just 3%, 3%, adds up. And when you don't have all that residual income to carry over to get you into the housing, I can see that's an issue. So let's talk a little bit more. A lot of people are afraid to get into housing. They don't know how the processes work, or they're unfamiliar with that territory, and they might be a little scared because they don't have adequate savings at this point. But that's where the down payment assistance can come in. So what does that conversation look like? Is it initiated with you and the buyer, or is it something that they talk with their lender? And what does it sound like? What's that conversation like?
Well, it definitely starts with their lender, and it's really important for possible home buyers to educate themselves as far as the process is concerned. And our agency does have a lot of great resources available for first-time home buyers as far as home ownership classes. And so definitely go on our website at ndhfa.org and have a look at those resources. You have to gather quite a bit of information to go into your local lender and have that conversation about what you can afford. And as far as products that are fitting for that possible homeowner, that lender will go through them. But it is important for the potential home buyer to understand what programs are there and to ask their lender to provide information on them.
And that's what's so interesting. You don't know what to ask what you don't know. And so it's really important. And the thing that's great now is with access to the internet and all the resources that are made available, in particular on ndhfa.org. I noticed on your website you've got some scrolling images on the top. And if you're patient and you wait for them to go through, you can see them all. If you're impatient like me, you click to advance. And one that really caught my eye is a graphic of a mouse. And it says, before you buy your house, use your mouse. You click on that and it takes you to home buyer education resources that you make available. And so some of the things that you offer are some courses and incentives. They include eHome America, which is an online education program for first-time home buyers, home inspectors that are registered in North Dakota. You've got a link to the FTC's Bureau of Consumer Protection. You've got a link to Preparing for Homeownership, which has some calculators. Those are great. You don't have to make that phone call. You could use the calculator first just to kind of gauge where you're at. You've got a link to North Dakota Jumpstart Coalition, as well as a link to SaveAndInvest.org. So plenty of resources made available, and of course the contact information for the Housing Finance Agency. If someone were interested, do you have a staff person available within the agency where they could pick up the phone and call for additional resources?
Absolutely. We're always willing to talk to anybody, and we certainly want to put those resources out there and make them available for everybody. They can call our direct line, our number, it's 328-8080.
Excellent. So let's continue on the conversation about the accomplishments of the North Dakota Housing Finance Agency. So I'm looking at the sheet that you provide again that highlights what took place in 2015. Another thing that stands out is your monitoring of the 6,105 units in 213 projects that are a part of the low-income housing tax credit and HIF programs, the Housing Incentive Fund programs. It looks like in 2015, new and rehabbed housing, 1,389 units in 2015 alone. Tell us about the low-income housing credit as well as the Housing Incentive Fund. How is that going? How did that pan out in 2015? And then after we find out about 2015, can you allude to what we expect in 2016 and beyond?
Sure. Well, it's two programs that we're kind of talking about. So I'll start out with the low-income housing tax credit program, which is a federal program, and our state does receive this minimum allocation for credits. But what we're able to do with those very competitive credits is to provide equity into projects that develop affordable housing, and it's really geared for the very low income households and extremely low income households. That program did start in 1989, and so we have about 165 projects throughout the state of North Dakota that are currently being monitored by us. Annually, we have a application round that ends in September that we get about 10 applications and can fund about 5. So it's definitely oversubscribed as far as need. The Housing Incentive Fund, we did receive reauthorization in 2015 for $35 million. $30 million of that is in income tax credit contributions. Contributors receive a dollar-for-dollar income tax credit for contributing to our fund, and $5 million came from the Bank of North Dakota. With that, we held a funding round in July or June of this year, and we were able to award all $35 million at that time. Throughout the course of the last 6 months or so, there's 3 projects that couldn't meet fruition, and so we are authorized to hold another funding round in March. It's going to end March 31st. So we're taking applications right now for about $9 million worth of funding availability. $5 million of that, however, is from a transfer from Bank of North Dakota, and it's geared for communities of 12,500 and below. The Housing Incentive Fund has had a great history so far. We've been reauthorized in 2011, 13, and 15. Total, we have, what is our total of funding that we've sent out so far? Do we have that number?
40.
Yeah, $49 million. It has gone throughout the state of North Dakota. The Housing Incentive Fund does right now target essential service worker units, and that is those that are employed by city, state, and county, and school teachers, long-term care facilities, medical facilities. So it's definitely to try to help those communities that are not able to hire enough police officers and people to work in their hospitals.
So with the changing economics in the state, largely fueled by the reduced prices on oil, do you anticipate next session this program in particular changing or being modified, especially in the focus when it comes to those essential service workers, if this might be something that's expanded beyond that capacity or perhaps could include a component for single family, not just multifamily? What are your thoughts on or things that you're talking about?
We're certainly looking at how the Housing Incentive Fund really can meet the best needs in North Dakota. As Jennifer said, it started in 2011, and it was coupled with the boom in the oil patch and the flood in Minot that really had a big impact because we weren't able to do a lot with our low-income housing tax credit, as Jennifer said. That really, for the longest time, was really the only development program that we had. And so the Housing Incentive Fund came along, and that was the state's really first big foray into housing development, and it has been incredibly successful. And so we are in the process right now of looking at how that needs to be different so that we are meeting those needs across the state. A lot of the Housing Incentive Fund really was geared toward the oil patch in the beginning, and that priority for essential service workers came out of that because there were big challenges in recruiting and retaining those workers who were plowing the streets and driving the school buses and teaching kids. And they had a difficult time finding affordable housing in their community. And so that's where it came from. Things have changed out in the oil patch. There's no doubt about that. And so we will continue to monitor that and see how we can make the Housing Incentive Fund work.
Excellent. You're listening to Super Talk 1270's Free for All Friday with the Bismarck Mandan Home Builders Association. Stick with us. Jennifer and Max will be back after break, along with Terry Johnson from the Bismarck Mandan Home Builders. We'll talk about the home show and the approaching Parade of Homes.
Right now, 37.
News headlines and weather together. Live on Super Talk 1270.
Welcome back. This is Dot Frank with the Bismarck Mandan Home Builders Association on another Free for All Friday. In studio today with some very special guests from the North Dakota Housing Finance Agency. We have Jennifer Henderson and Max Wetz from that agency. We just got done talking about some of the programs and accomplishments that the agency has achieved in 2015. We ended with the Housing Incentive Fund, which really was started to address the housing needs and concerns out west, fueled by not only the flooding that mine had experienced, but the influx of individuals that came into the oil impact counties. That is changing slightly, and as we heard from Max, they continue to monitor the program to make the best use of it to ensure that affordability is here, because outside of just the oil-related activities, we have incredibly low unemployment rates across all sectors of our economy. So it's important that we maintain a due diligence to provide that housing for all types of workers across the state. Now, at your housing conference, Jennifer and Max, you had a session that was specific to some of the statistics you honed, or with the help of North Dakota State University, honed regarding oil workers and their impact on the state, in particular when it comes to housing. Taking a look at that session in particular, of which those people who are listening today can always go online to ndhfa.org, click on your housing conference, and then find these handouts. It's from the Oil and Gas Industry Workforce Characteristics and Implications Study to see exactly what we're talking about. But what are some of the high points that came out as a result of this study that they conducted?
Well, Dr. Nancy Hoder from North Dakota State University took on this study because we needed to better understand who was coming to North Dakota and what their perceptions and what their intentions were, whether or not they intended to become full-time North Dakotans, whether they were just here for the job and were out. And so she did had a lot of conversations with oil patch workers and with community leaders, really was out there talking to people about what made them tick and what they wanted out of their experience in North Dakota. For most of those resident workers, those resident oil patch workers, they live in owned housing. They for the most part, live in their own homes in North Dakota. And for those non-resident workers, those people who might own a home somewhere else or have family in another state, they're really here just for the job. And for the most part, they're living in the crew camps and the rented apartments in communities like Williston and Watford City and Dickinson. What she found was that about 81% of those non-residents really had no intention of making North Dakota their home, which is really an incredible statistic that we do have this non-resident workforce that has no plans to come to North Dakota and make it their home. But there is that 19% that do want to move here. But one of the biggest challenges for them in doing that is price, is the housing costs that are out there in our communities right now, and the price risk that they didn't want to purchase a home that they fear would lose value over time. So we have some challenges, and this session highlighted that we have some challenges to bring those prices down and make housing more affordable for everybody in North Dakota.
And you look at the response that's been happening as far as the decline in oil activity by those communities that were most impacted, the elimination of man camps and the cutbacks on the stipends associated with employer-related housing. What kind of impact do you think that will have on our ability to, recruit and retain those non-residents or resident oil field workers here in our state?
I think we have some challenges in in moving forward. The world really has changed in North Dakota over the past year, and we're going to have to see how the oil prices play out. But really, this is a great time right now for us to move forward with some of those projects, some of the infrastructure projects, some of the housing projects, and put some affordable housing in place. I think that is incredibly important going forward, because oil prices aren't going to be down forever. We are going to see an increase in people coming back to North Dakota, and we need to make sure that we're prepared for that.
One thing that I think is really interesting in the statistics that she compiled for this study specifically is she asked for the factors that affect the non-residents. So those are the people that you referenced that aren't living here, the 81% who don't plan to move here permanently. But we still have a slice, 20% or near so, that would consider moving to North Dakota. And like you said, the number one reason that they're not wanting to move to North Dakota, or that's impacting that decision, is housing is too expensive. And that's something that I think your agency has continued to battle. That's kind of why you're in existence, whether it's for oil field workers or just ordinary folks out there that want to get into housing. On the top of that list, though, we had some other things that I'd like to talk about and see if your agency or this session led to some brainstorming or some solutions, perhaps, for these shortcomings. The type of housing I want is not available. That ranked pretty high too. Do you know if there's any kind of specifics behind that or insight? What type of housing are they looking for that's not available here in?
I'm not sure, because our communities really have thrown everything at the wall. We have all kinds of housing out there. We've got single family, we've got townhomes, we've got condos, we've got apartments. And I think it's important, especially going forward, that as we start to see those crew camps and those RV parks and some of those other temporary housing solutions that made sense in the boom times, that we have that adequate infrastructure, housing stock out there, that people have those options. And
honestly, I think some of the answer to that question is the type of housing that they want isn't affordable either. It's just not available for them. So, there's a hotel there, but I don't want to live there. I'd like to live in an apartment.
There's a 3-bedroom home, but it's $425,000.
Exactly.
And I only have $200. Mm-hmm. Another thing that stands out, and this isn't surprising to me, it's something that I think the state has struggled with when it comes to retaining and attracting young people. And that is, they cited the lack of lifestyle amenities.
That's a challenge for any community, especially the ones in the West that had their growth stunted for a long time. And so they are trying to develop economically, but it takes time. Watford and Williston have both built new facilities for the community. And so that there's that growth happening. Watford City has a new high school that will be coming online. So it's coming. It takes time. And so I think it's a matter of being patient with that and allowing communities to catch up and prepare for those folks.
And one of the things that Dr. Hoder said was that some of those perceptions about North Dakota, the weather, on a 50-degree day in Bismarck in February, those aren't as big of key considerations for people in moving here as you would have thought, and as well as some of those other stereotypes that we might not have the quality of life or the good schools, that kind of thing. Those didn't hold as much. It was really more housing price that was the big factor for people.
And that's good news, because for a lot of time, North Dakota has caught flack for the weather, which we have no control over. So how do we overcome that challenge? But this does indicate, as you mentioned, Max, that's not the predominant issue with moving to North Dakota. It's actually factors that we do have some control over. The next one on the list, which surprises me, but it doesn't, and again, I think it goes back to Jennifer's comment about having some patience for us to catch up to what's been happening in North Dakota recently, is the access to health care. Lack of access or inadequate health care. You're seeing a lot of investment by health care, primarily those health care facilities that are located here in the Bismarck-Mandan area, moving out and establishing clinics in western North Dakota. So again, with time, that might correct itself.
But the other challenge with that is these healthcare facilities in Bismarck have large numbers of staff that they're trying to get. I believe the Sanford is at 1,300 or so people, job openings, and those job openings range from registered nurses all the way down to the cafeteria workers. So there's a lot of jobs that need to be filled here in North Dakota.
Absolutely. So all working together to increase the attractiveness of the community. So it's kind of interesting to take a look at this and see what we do have some impact over. Again, it takes time, and it takes, I think, the entire state to work together to achieve the environments that's necessary to bring the people in. Because as you mentioned, 1,300 jobs with one employer in particular is an alarming number. So we still need people to come to the state, make it home. Again, it's not the weather that people are saying is preventing them, and we can help you with a lot of these other factors. So we talked a little bit about the statistics and the impact of oil. Now I'd like to just talk about affordable housing in general. And you have some really great statistics. Affordable housing is one of those terms that's really, really hard to contain because affordability is different to everybody. Just depends on your circumstances. And you had another session at the statewide housing conference that I thought was phenomenal, and it was the impact of affordable housing. Oftentimes we don't consider how affordable housing impacts really every aspect of life. And whether you can afford it or not, it's impacting you in one way, shape, or form. And so if we could we've got just a couple more minutes before the break, some time talking about the highlights from the impact of affordable housing presentation. What are some of the things that stood out to you? What immediately was shocking to me is how it looks like North Dakota is doing fairly well serving the low income. Where we see a huge gap, however, is in the extremely low income and services made available to them. And if we don't make the services available to extremely low, how do we anticipate them to get up to the low income level at some point in time in their lives? So can you talk about this study and what came about and what kind of action plans you hope
Yeah,
take place?
in North Dakota, we have about 61,000 low-income households that are cost-burdened, meaning that they're putting more than 30% of their income towards their housing costs. And when you do that, you're taking money away from other things, from food, from medication, from just a whole variety of things. And so it has wide-ranging impacts when you're not able to be affordably housed. And so that's why it's so important that we have these resources, these housing units that are targeted for those extremely low income people. When you are worried about where you're going to live and worried about how you're going to pay the rent, that impacts kids especially. Probably the biggest. That's in their educational attainment. When they're concerned about their housing situation or when they're in an overcrowded situation, making school a priority really falls off. And so we need to have those resources that are available for those very low income people.
Absolutely. And, for them to be able to focus on mechanisms that they can use to move themselves forward in their current condition and current state. When we come back, we'll continue this conversation with the North Dakota Housing Finance Agency. We'll wrap things up, and then we'll lead into some exciting events that are just around the corner for the Bismarck Mandan Home Builders Association. Please stick with us on this Free for All Friday. You're listening to Super Talk 1270.
Right now, 46.
Mary Lou Henner, weekdays on Super Talk 1270.
Welcome back. This is a Free for All Friday with the Bismarck Mandan Home Builders Association. A beautiful day outside. We hope you're in, though, listening to us or maybe out and about with your headphones on. Stick with us. We've got about 15 minutes of the program left. Time flies when you're having fun, and we are having lots of fun. Talking to our friends from the North Dakota Housing Finance Agency. Jennifer and Max are with us. Welcome back from break. And thanks for hanging out with us. We ended the last break talking about some of the housing statistics and what is affordability and how does it impact us. And bottom line, like it or not, affordable housing has an impact on each and every one of us. There's lots of ways we can cite that, from the development of children and their productivity in the classroom to the focus we have from our employees at work when they're not having to be concerned about housing situations and housing payments. Great information on ndhfas.org's website regarding this topic. There was a presentation called The Impact of Affordable Housing. We talked about how as a state, we're doing okay when it comes to the low-income housing. Very low income is where we start to see some discrepancies in availability, and it's pretty bad for those who are in the extremely low income range, which is the 0 to 30% of the average median income. How do we overcome that? I mean, what type of housing is necessary to accommodate those who are in that extremely low income bracket?
It's very challenging, Dot. Those folks that are in the extremely low income household range can only afford about $388 a month for rent. So what that looks like is apartments that are built with zero debt so that they can cash flow and remain in operation and pay their snow blowing expenses and their utilities. So it's a very big challenge to have that available housing. And it's also important that those seniors that are on fixed incomes that might own their home, that we help them stay in their home. So it's kind of a twofold kind of a situation there.
So when it comes to zero debt, wow, that would be great. I can't imagine there are many people out there, though, that are in the position to create a project with that caveat. So how does the North Dakota Housing Finance Agency facilitate that type of construction? And we talked about some of your programs. Does it come down to layering different programs that you and maybe other agencies provide?
It does. The North Dakota Department of Commerce has a couple programs as well that are typically layered with our Housing Incentive Fund and our Federal Tax Credit Program. It takes all of them working together and bringing in their little slice. Bank of North Dakota has an affordable flex-pays financing to buy down the interest as well. You have to put all of them together to build housing that is targeted to the 30% AMI. But also what's important is that we would like to have mixed income apartments out there. So throwing in 6 units that are geared towards those lower incomes, that's where the Housing Incentive Fund was able to bring in a smaller portion of equity to just put a few units in a market rate so that we can have mixed income households
So we're
living
not
together.
talking, one apartment complex that is entirely dedicated to the extremely low income, which is difficult to achieve, that zero debt like you had mentioned. It is a mixed use effort and having that mixed affordability. And what does that do as far as environment? There might be some people that are kind of skeptic about creating an extremely low income housing project for various reasons, right or wrong, supported or not. But the mix of incomes can be very beneficial for all involved in that housing development. How does that play out?
Well, you would never know necessarily who was a low-income person. You might live next to a low-income person right now, and you don't know that. We have so many of our people that live in our apartments, in our housing, are working folks, that they're out there doing the job, and they just might not have the income that somebody else would. We also have an incredible amount of seniors that are on fixed income that really can't afford a huge rent payment. And so we have to make sure that we are providing these low rent apartments for them. But as Jennifer said, we want to make sure that they're integrated into the community and that they can contribute to that property and to that community like they have all their lives.
It's really interesting because, you talk about the extremely low incomes and those living on Social Security, but one statistic is that at $14.40 an hour, an hourly worker, you can afford about $749 a month rent, which is still pretty low for even our market in the Bismarck-Mandan area. There's a lot of occupations that pay much lower than $14.40. Daycare providers, bank tellers, all of those folks, you would never know that they make that small of a wage, but if you look at what they can afford, it's less than $750.
Yeah, so it really permeates through the entire community, those who are struggling with being able to make ends meet to have quality housing and affordable housing in the area. I thank both of you for joining us today. Before we say goodbye to you and I say good morning to Terry to talk about the Home Builders Association, any final remarks for those listeners out there? What's up next on your calendar at the agency, or what they need to be aware of in the months ahead?
Well, things are always going on at the agency. We will continue to keep pushing forward. We've got our housing needs assessment that we are working on diligently with Dr. Nancy Hoder. That's really going to be taking a good look, solid look at what's going on out in our communities in North Dakota. And so that's something that we're looking forward to getting that report done.
Excellent. And the resource for people to learn more about the Housing Finance Agency is?
Check us out online at ndhfa.org.
Excellent. Thank you for joining us this morning. And now I would like to have Terry hop on the line. Terry and I are the dynamic duo of the Home Builders Association. Terry, I like to reference as the home show expert.
Thank you, Dot.
And we just ended the home show.
We sure did.
What do you think? Last weekend, how'd it go?
Amazing. Wow. Mother Nature was cooperative with us. She got everybody thinking about spring. Everybody got out. The weather was beautiful. Traffic was great. The vendors were happy with the leads they got. And it was quite a show. We were full.
So we had a variety of vendors at this year's home show. You want to come up with just a few product categories that were covered at the event?
Everything was covered. You could do windows, shingling, you could decorate the inside of your home, flooring. If you needed new cookware, that was there. Everything under one roof.
Everything under one roof. And, we had a lot of people that came out, nearly 6,000 people that joined us over the course of just 2 days at the Bismarck Event Center, which means there were still some people that couldn't make it for one reason or another. I know there was a lot of events and activities. It's athletic season right now. But we produce a magazine. So for those people who couldn't get out to check out our booths, they can always go to our website and view the map. Now, the map was pretty interesting because it was a full house.
It was a full house. We used every bit of space in that whole arena very well. Yep.
And in the publication, if you go to bmhba.com and click on Home Show, you'll find a listing of the exhibitors. So let's say you're looking for some inspiration when it comes to kitchens and baths. Flip through the magazine and you can find the exhibitor list, right?
Correct. Yep, we have it all updated, and if all else fails, I've already actually had a call about somebody who wanted something, and I told them, give me a call at the office. I can get you in touch with that person. So, yeah, absolutely.
So if you missed the show, need some recommendations for some contractors or vendors, visit bmhba.com or call Terry at 222-2400. She can get you in touch with the right people. Now, we've got the home show behind us, not very far behind us, and we're already headed in to the preparations that are a part of the Spring Parade of Homes. What are you thinking this spring is going to be like for our Spring Parade of Homes?
Well, again, Mother Nature's been on our side. We've had calls about builders inquiring about putting homes in the Parade of Homes. I anticipate we're going to be as busy, if not busier. Our construction guys are going hard at it, so I anticipate we'll do as well as we've ever done.
So Terry is also an expert when it comes to the Parade of Homes and gets around to all the houses, communicates frequently with all of our builders who participate in the parade, and has seen the spectators come and go through each of the homes. What do you think is the big attraction for people when it comes to touring new construction?
Well, as the builders hope that it's somebody that would maybe purchase their home or, start plans for building a home, maybe get ideas. I guess all the spectators have different agendas, and we hope to cover all of them in our parade.
So what are your, favorite features when it comes to the Parade of Homes? When you walk in through those doors, what are you keeping an eye out for in new construction?
Oh, I like the kitchens. I'm kind of into the new trends in the kitchens, so that's always interesting to see. What are the trends? And I tend to go a little bit more modern, so that's what I look for.
Excellent. Well, there's opportunities for everybody. The fun thing about the Parade of Homes is there is something for everybody from a style perspective because we have so many participating builders that have their own influence and taste injected to each and every home. You can have those modern kitchens that Terry appreciates or maybe more traditional that others like. Put it on your calendar. Save the date. It's the last weekend in April, the Spring Parade of Homes. You can find additional details as we post them online at bmhba.com, and also check us out on Facebook. We're active on Facebook, aren't we, Terry?
We're very active.
Particularly today. There's some good reasons to get out there and see what we're posting. Thank you for tuning in to this Free for All Friday. This is Dot Frank with the Bismarck Mandan Home Builders Association. Again, a special thanks to our guests from the Housing Finance Agency. Please join us next time on Super Talk 1270.